We have lots to talk about here in today's video. We have some waiver wire activity, including 2 new players on waivers today and all kinds of NHL trade rumors, all kinds of updates from a variety of NHL insider sources. Tonight we're looking at talks around the Vancouver Canucks, the Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames around Nazem Kadri. Could Shane Wright be on the move in Seattle? When it comes to Vancouver, we're talking about Pettersson, Garland, even Brock Boeser's name is reportedly out there as well. Some talk as well about the future of Tyler Myers and where he might end up. Steven Stamkos apparently has a few teams he would likely accept a trade to. He does obviously have control, but the veteran player having a pretty good year in Nashville will consider a few options according to one NHL insider. Also some talk around the Sabres and Bruins and a few other teams coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we've got lots to discuss here. The waiver wire activity we'll get to in a second, but the rumor mill is rampant with all kinds of names out there. Of course, we're now into the home stretch here to the NHL trade deadline, day 2 of getting action back in the NHL calendar after the Olympic break. And, well, we're just over a week away from the trade deadline. So we'll start quickly with the waiver news and then a couple of injury updates as well. For waivers, we had Sonny Milano with Washington on waivers yesterday. We found out he is cleared, so he's can be reassigned or what have you, but he's not going anywhere. Today, new on waivers, we've got Matthew Joseph with the St. Louis Blues, and then we have Ty Cartier with the Seattle Kraken. Both players kind of underperforming from an offensive standpoint this season. Joseph is a pending unrestricted free agent, 29 years old, has 11 points in 39 games. Obviously has had a limited role. Speedy skater, obviously can play penalty kill as well, but just really hasn't worked out for him all that great in St. Louis. He was in Ottawa before that, in Tampa, where he originally had started. He's had his moments where he's put up some decent numbers, but consistency has been key for Joseph over the story of his career, really. So we'll see. Joseph does carry a $2.95 million cap hit, so I'm not sure he's going to get picked up because of that, but there was some speculation from NHL insiders that if he were to clear waivers, it could help facilitate a trade. As we've talked about before, when players clear waivers, some people say, well, why would they get traded after instead of team picking them up for nothing? And, well, the answer is so they can put them in the minors. They don't have to carry them on the NHL roster if they've gone through the waivers process. So we'll see what happens there. And in Cartier's case, he's got another year, $1.25 million. So that may be problematic for some teams, but he's younger, mid-20s, 8 points in 40 games, not a lot. But a couple of years ago, he kind of broke through, and I think he had around 23, 25 points, something like that. But it's been a bit of a decline. Really, last year his numbers were down, and this year's numbers are down again. And, of course, he's no longer waivers exempt, so he needs waivers to be going down to the minors. So we'll see how things work out. I think there's a greater chance Cartier could be claimed, making 1.25 with his age and everything. So we'll see. Wouldn't be shocked either if both players end up clearing. A couple of updates on the injury front. Chris Letang was returning tonight for the Penguins. He had been out, of course, from before dealing with an injury on IR. Of course, the Penguins without captain Sidney Crosby, who's expected to be out for about a month or so, pick up a huge 2 points tonight. And in Ottawa, there was some uncertainty if Tim Stützle was going to be in the lineup for tonight's game due to illness. He did, in fact, play, but they had called up Arthur Kaliyev as a bit of an insurance piece, if you will. Didn't end up dressing, but I know raised some question marks. We did get clarification from Elliot Friedman as well that part of the reason why Kaliyev hasn't been a call-up for the Senators this season is there was a lot of allegations made against him earlier from, I believe it was a former girlfriend or whatnot. There were some gambling allegations in there and stuff. Anyways, they've gone through a thorough investigation and he's been cleared. They said they have no grounds, no reason to consider any wrongdoing. So now that his name's cleared, he's been tearing it up in the AHL. I wouldn't be surprised if Ottawa maybe gives him maybe a little bit more of a actual, legit call to give him some games, not just as a insurance injury last minute replacement. So we'll see how things go on that front. Now, as I mentioned, second night of action after the Olympic break. I thought some of the games last night were a little sloppy. I don't think a lot of teams didn't look super sharp. Tonight's games look a little bit more entertaining. We had a decent amount of goals across the board, but we know teams are certainly jockeying for position and trying to make determinations on their future. We got updates from TSN Insider Trading, some updates from Dave Pagnota, Elliot Friedman, Frank Saravalli, who made an appearance tonight on Amazon's Coast to Coast program. Lots of stuff to talk about. So let's dive in here. We'll start first with Calgary. Calgary Flames are going to be a team that's, interesting to watch nonetheless. Darren Dreger on his hits today kind of reiterated again, Nazem Kadri wants to be traded. So this is the second time he stated this now. He does mention the Avalanche again as a potential reunion, as a trade partner. The issue with Colorado making any kind of big move, though, is the lack of assets. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to pull that off, how they're going to give something to the Flames or any team for that matter that they're interested in. But a lot of the teams interested in Kadri are also looking at Vinny Trocheck. Right now, teams still believe Minnesota to be the front runner, but lots of teams have interest, so it's kind of hard to say where things go on that front. Of course, we all want to know what the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, they're a team that gets a ton of play in the media, of course, being such a large market. And going into the break, they had a decent little stretch, kind of giving some hope and optimism to the fan base. But the last two games now that they've had a back-to-back coming out of the break have not been good. They go down to a tough place to play, mind you, in Tampa, and then against the Panthers. They dropped both games. But to be honest, it wasn't even the fact that they lost. It's kind of their play throughout both games. Didn't look great, not exactly inspiring if you want to give management more of a reason to consider not selling as much or to possibly be buying. Things haven't gone well. So lots of names in action there. We're hearing about Bobby McMahon maybe being re-signed, maybe being traded. Pagnota was saying it might take a 5x5 contract to keep him, and I honestly don't think I would do that. I like Bobby McMahon. He's been a good story, late bloomer for the Leafs, but that's a little much. I'm not sure I'd go there, but we'll see how management feels about it. Clearly, some other names getting attention, of course, are Brandon Carlo, some degree Anthony Stolarz, but guys that they don't even necessarily need to trade are getting some attention, like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Carlo would fall into that category. We know Scotty Lawton, of course, needs a new deal, so kind of hard to say what his future holds. But Ekman-Larsson is a player that Frank Saravalli tonight mentioned could be of interest to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, we know that they want to add a top four defenseman, preferably a right shot, but Ekman-Larsson might be one of those guys who could play offside maybe. I don't know, but he mentions him as one of the couple of defensemen that the Oilers are looking at. I think Connor Murphy is also a name to watch with Edmonton out of Chicago, a name and player that Stan Bowman knows well from his time in Chicago too. So some interesting names there. Ekman-Larsson's a player that they don't really have to move. He's played well, still under contract, so they don't have to make a decision on his future. And what we've heard from other insiders is that as much as the Leafs, if they do decide to sell, very well could look to move Ekman-Larsson, it's going to take a pretty big offer. And the thing with Edmonton, like Colorado, I don't know about the assets, right? That's going to be the issue. I don't know if they want to move an Ike Howard or Matt Savoy. It might take something more considerate like that to make it happen. It's going to be tough for them to do that. You got to think the Oilers are also having some goaltending buyer's remorse would be a good way to put it. Apparently, according to one NHL insider that we heard about, actually was Sarah Valley that mentioned this, but he's heard Stuart Skinner's name is kind of out there again, that the Penguins may not hold on to him, which I find surprising. Obviously, I think this week will be a big determination for Kyle Dubas. And the Penguins not having Crosby in the lineup will be a challenge, but if they can try to get through it, I don't know. I mean, they're not going to want to take a step back when they have a shot to get into the playoffs. As long as they have Crosby and Malkin, those guys around, they're going to want to give them a shot to perform during the hockey's postseason. So we'll see about that. I mean, I don't know. Skinner would be an interesting name for a bunch of teams. So we will see what happens there, if anything. But it's definitely another name to watch. Elliot Friedman also had some updates on Alex Tuck in Buffalo. A name that he said over the Olympic break he was hearing negotiations and contract extensions were ongoing, but didn't seem like they've really made any progress. The last he has heard is that the offer would be somewhere in the 8 range, and it sounds like Tuck's representatives are looking for around 10. So there still remains a big gap. Again, the Sabres are in position. Obviously the next, if they go on a bit of a losing streak, maybe that changes, but they're not locked in guaranteed, but they're in a decent spot to make the playoffs for the first time in, 14 or 15 years. They're not going to want to weaken that team. So if they need to, then maybe they use Tuck as their own rental. But regardless of what they do and how they handle it, it sure seems like until they make more progress, so there's definitely a question mark, definitely on his future. Shane Wright's also a name to watch, according to Friedman, with the Kraken. We know they were trying to make a big move. They were involved in the Artemi Panarin sweepstakes. Of course, Panarin rejected a deal to go there, so it wasn't happening. But if the Kraken can turn their attention to another legitimate top-line player, which they apparently are looking to do, Wright is definitely a name, according to Friedman, that they were willing to build a package around. So, again, interesting name to watch there. The Bruins are looking to add in multiple areas if they can. They're looking for a top 6 forward and a top 4, preferably right-handed defenseman. They have been linked to former Bruin Jake DeBrusk of Vancouver, who we've heard is welcome to a fresh start, you could say. Obviously, he knows the Bruins well. I don't think his time there really ended the greatest, but if they're interested in reacquiring him, I'm not sure how he feels about it, but it could be a reunion there. There's also talk that the Bruins are looking at a guy like Justin Falk out of St. Louis, Braden Shen in St. Louis, another name, and Connor Garland, another name to watch as well in Vancouver. So they're looking at a variety of players between the Bruins, between the Blues and the Canucks. I'm sure they're looking elsewhere as well, but they'd like to add both in the forward group and on defense if they're able to. Now, we've heard Tyler Myers' name out there as well and being held out for trade-related reasons. The Vancouver Canucks offer that they are contemplating apparently is from Detroit. Now, the Red Wings, not surprisingly, like to add another veteran on the right side. Myers is considering it, but all indications are from NHL insiders that he seems like he's less likely to take that deal. At least at this point, there's some belief that he probably would prefer to wait a little closer to the trade deadline to see what other teams may materialize. It sounds like he really likes being in Vancouver. He's kind of settled in from a home and family perspective. So he's only going to accept a trade and leave if it's something he really thinks is a good fit on and off the ice. There's some belief that the Dallas Stars have interest. Of course, he does have some connections to that state. So there's belief that he would be open to going there. That might be one he accepts, but I don't think he's going to accept going to Detroit, at least not at this point. It makes kind of sense to wait and see what other options might exist before you make a big decision like that, especially if it's not something that's what you would consider a slam dunk easy decision. So we'll see what the future holds for Myers. It sounds like it's probably not in Vancouver, but he does have full control over that. There's some reports as well that Elias Pettersson in Vancouver might be more willing to consider a trade now than prior to the Olympics. That maybe going over to chance play with Sweden, be around some different guys, and just kind of get away and have a bit of a break from everything, that he might be more willing than he was before to waive his no move to facilitate that trade. Now, the Canucks, again, have an asset in Pettersson that's signed long-term. They signed that contract with the hopes that he was going to be their number one center, a 100-point producer, hopefully on a consistent basis, lead the team in many ways, and it hasn't worked out. The team has really gone the opposite direction, moving several players, including former captain Quinn Hughes recently, and it's just not really where they thought they'd be at all. The LA Kings apparently are still a team that have interest. There's some reports as well that Carolina has never really lost interest, that there's still a degree of interest there. Detroit's name has come up as well as a potential spot for Pettersson as well, all that according to the insider Nick Kyprios. So we'll see. Obviously, Pettersson has a full no move, so he's going to have to agree to anything if anything does happen, and those teams are showing interest, so we'll see if anything materializes there or not. Steven Stamkos, his name is also out there on Insider Trading. Pierre LeBrun was talking about the fact that the Predators are, they're not out there, I don't think, shopping super hard to move Stamkos or anything like that. He has a full say on his future anyway, like some of these guys. But basically, the Predators will take an offer to him to consider should they get one they like. And Stamkos' agent and their camp have basically been working on a short list of some teams that if a deal comes through that they would at least look at. And right at the top of the list is his former team, the Lightning. So could there be a reunion with Stammer and the Lightning? It sounds like if Tampa's interested, that he would be willing to go back. The Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild were the other teams mentioned as teams that he might waive to facilitate a trade to. But again, we don't know all the different levels of interest in all those players. Minnesota, I think, would prefer a centerman. I'm not sure that's the most likely landing spot for him. Dallas, I can see maybe. Tampa, of course, because of the connection to that team, and he's played with so many of those guys, it'll be a seamless transition for him. But we'll see. Brock Boeser also, his name is out there. Darren Dreger's mentioned that. But again, another player who signed in Vancouver, newer contract, underperforming. So it's going to take, a little bit more of the perfect fit to make that work. I'm not sure how much interest there are in Boeser, but his name is out there, according to Darren Dreger, which means some teams are inquiring, probably wondering if they can kind of rejuvenate him and get him back to the goal scorer he once was, obviously having a down season after signing a pretty lucrative free agent contract to remain with Vancouver. But at this point, like I said, he's content to stay, and Vancouver's obviously, not jumping to move him, but he is getting interest. Evander Kane's name's also been up there a lot, too, that NHL insiders have said should move. There's lots of chatter about him. I'm not sure how many teams exactly are in the mix, but enough that a lot of these insiders feel like it's something that should materialize, and still lots of talk around Patrick Laine that he's pretty much seems to be almost as close to a guarantee to go. I wonder that Montreal is going to probably have to retain 50% to make that more tradable, but we will see where things go on that front. So all kinds of players getting names mentioned. Ristolainen and Mackenzie Weegar, another couple of defensemen too, getting a lot of attention in the room. Looks like right shot defenseman, centerman, of course, right at the top of the list there. And on Insider Trading, they also again mentioned the fact of Sergei Bobrovsky. The Panthers are likely going to be a team that takes a wait and see approach this week. Like Pierre LeBrun was saying, they have, I think it's 5 games over the next 7 days leading to the deadline. If they can win at least 3 or 4 of those, they probably figure they're going to be in the race enough that they're probably not going to look to sell off, try to keep the team together and see if they can push to get in. But if they lose, 2 or 3 of those and it's kind of trending the opposite way, not looking good, then we'll probably see, for the first time in a while, them sell off some assets and try to kind of retool the team here a little bit to prepare for next year. But we'll see. Lots of names out there, lots of activity pending. We'll see what happens here in the coming days leading to the deadline. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments, and we will discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.